Hi, I'm Holly Ann Munn, Managing Director of Safe for Kids. In a moment, I'm going to walk you through my parent handbook for teaching abuse prevention education to children. But before I start, I just wanted to take some time to thank Mary Butterworth from Developmental Disabilities WA for making this possible. Mary got a small grant to run workshops across the metro area for parents with children with special needs, and also to do this video and provide the parent handbook free for parents. So through her dedication, this has been brought to you. And it's so important because unfortunately up to a third of Australia's children will suffer some form of sexual abuse before their 18th birthday. And children with special needs are up to 7 times more likely to be abused than mainstream children. Now, I'm not telling you that to distress you. I'm telling you that because with the help of this handbook, and hopefully your children are learning this at school, and if they're not, I'd really encourage you to go to your child's school and say, why isn't my child learning protective education? Because it is parents and schools' jobs to keep kids safe, but you can't always be there. So children are the last line of defence, so we need to teach them these skills. So with the help of this book, I'm hoping that you'll find it really useful. Please take 25 minutes to watch the video and work through the handbook, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Bye. So I'm going to walk you through this parent handbook. I wrote this book to help parents go through protective education with their children. It is supposed to be taught in every school in our state in Western Australia, but in my experience that's not always the case. So having this book will help you do it with your children. The first section is the first life rule of protective education. We all have the right to feel safe all of the time. So it breaks it right down for you. So you'd go through what each of the words mean. What is a human right? And that's a really important thing to get children to understand. What is a right? I explain it the way to children like this. It's called a human right. It's like the right to have food in your tummy, clothes on your body, somewhere to live, and an education. In Australia, you're born with these rights. Explaining the difference about rights versus wants, because every 9-year-old I know thinks it's their right to have a mobile phone, and that's a want. If you misuse it, we can take it away. To feel safe rather than being safe, because you can be safe somewhere and yet still not feel safe, and then all of the time. So at home, at school, in a park, at the shops, everywhere. The next page is on feelings, and it's really important that we give children the language of feelings and explain to them and model the language of feelings. So, if you're feeling frustrated or annoyed, use that with children, because in my experience, children have a very limited vocab of feelings, and children, even in mainstream, when I ask kids in grade 6 to name me feelings, happy, sad, angry and scared, there's only usually 4. So we need to increase their feelings vocab, and that's really important. And for me, I think the feelings word of frustrated is the most invaluable feelings word for children. We all feel it, but sometimes children don't have the word and they might lash out and hit somebody. So being able to express themselves rather than hurting somebody is a much better option. So there are 2 pages that you could do with your children. It's just joining up the so it's got what is the feeling, and they just have to match how that goes. The next part of the book is something called the safety continuum. So we teach safety in a continuum. So we have safe at one end, and I always use this sign language for children. So I teach them this for safe and this for unsafe, and every time I use either word, I would always use this sign language. And it's such a simple tool, but you'll be surprised how many times you catch your children either using it with you, or you'll be able to use it with them. Perhaps you're out somewhere and your child's doing something you're not really happy about. You can just go, and they know, wait to get in the car. Or your child might be out somewhere and a group of friends want them to go off and do something, and they don't want to go. They might come up and just go really subtly, and you're okay. No, we can't. They can't go because we're going out. So safe and unsafe, this sign language might be a really valuable tool to teach all of your children. So we have safe and unsafe, and also whenever I'm teaching children this in class, everything to do with safe will always be green, and everything to do with unsafe will always be red. So again, they might be helpful. You might use a card system as well. But as well as safe and unsafe, we also, because there's 4 things on the continuum, let me just show you. So we have safe, fun to feel scared, risking on purpose, and unsafe. And so fun to feel scared are times like going on a roller coaster ride or watching a scary movie, but the emphasis on fun. And the most important part of this safety continuum is this formula. To feel safe, you need to have either a choice, there needs to be some kind of control, or there needs to be a time limit on it. You don't need all of them to feel safe, but you at least need one of them. So going on a roller coaster ride, you have a choice about that. Nobody usually makes you. You're certainly not in control because the man or the computer running the ride's in control. But even if you're throwing up, after a short while, it's going to stop and you'll start to feel safe again. And teaching this choice control time limit is really, really important because sometimes you have to do things that might not feel safe, like going to the dentist. That for me, that would be risking on purpose, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you go to the dentist, you don't have a choice about it, you're not in control, but you go there for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, you're going to get a huge bill, but at least you're out of there. So it's that time limit. So really help your children understand choice, control, time limit when we're talking about safety. And for me, risking on purpose is the most important. We need children to be risk takers, but we need them to do it safely. So, how many of you played on a trampoline when you were a child? Nowadays we have nets around trampolines, but that's not teaching children. Children need to take risks to build resiliency. So help your children take risks, but again, by embedding that choice, control, time limit, they'll learn how to do it safely. I'm all for you tell a 2-year-old, don't touch the cup of tea, it's hot. Don't touch the cup of tea, it's hot. They have to touch the cup of tea. Otherwise they don't get any cause and effect understanding. So please encourage your children to take risks, but to do it safely and to listen to their body signals, which is what we're going to talk about next. The third lesson, or the third part of the book, is something called your early warning signs. Our early warning signs is our body's way of telling us that we feel unsafe. It's our fight, flight, freeze, or faint response. All animals get these early warning signs, but humans don't always listen to them. Have you ever had somebody stand next to you in a crowd and you've gone, ooh, there's something about them I just don't like? As adults, we would call it gut feeling or intuition, but kids really understand it when we call them early warning signs. They can tell you how animals show their early warning signs. They know that snails and turtles go into their shell, and that squids squirt ink, and that skunks squirt out stinky, farty, smelly stuff. So in the book, I've given you a big long list of activities that you can do to help your children feel their early warning signs. For instance, do you remember playing the game Operation, where it zaps and you jump? So there's many ways of getting kids safely to feel their early warning signs, so that they recognise these body signals. And if you get these body signals, you need to go and tell an adult that you trust. And you need to keep on telling until you feel safe again. So the activities that you might do with your children, there's a gorgeous little picture that shows early warning signs. And then there's also activity sheets. Oops, wrong way. Activity sheets that you can have your children draw their own early warning signs. As well as talking about early warning signs, when I'm teaching this to children, I also, at the end of it, once they've understood what their early warning signs are, I teach them the difference between telling and dobbing. We tell children don't dob all the time, but we've never linked it to anything. By linking to these body signals, kids really understand. So I teach them that dobbing is telling on someone to get them into trouble. Telling, on the other hand, is because you feel unsafe. So kids will come up to me now after I've taught it to them and go, oh, Miss Holly, that kid's not eating their lunch. And I say, oh, where in your body are you feeling that? Have you got your early warning signs? They're like, no, I'm dobbing, because they realise that they're just trying to get that child into trouble. So that might be something that you find useful for teaching your children. The fourth lesson or section of the book is the second theme of protective education. We can talk to someone about anything, and we want children to be able to come to you or other family members. So once we've gone through and broken that down, we look at we, the someone, because we're going to brainstorm who can go on their safety team and what the anythings might be. It could be awful, it could be yucky, it could be shame or rude or dirty, but it's also good things. Please encourage your children, once they have this safety team that we're going to talk about now, to really foster those relationships to make sure that they know that they're on your child's safety team and that they can talk to them about anything and nobody will judge them. Now, the safety team is 5 trusted adults that they can talk to if they don't feel safe. Now, this is just a guide, but it's how I teach it to children, because to be honest, it's quite hard for children to come up with 5 people. So how I encourage children to do it, so they need to be adults. So I say to the children they need to be old enough to drive legally, because I've had kids saying, my phone, your brother can drive. And they also need to be able to use the telephone, because some kids either want to put the dog or God on their safety team, and you can end up in a big argument. By saying they can't use the telephone stops all the arguing. But as well as being an adult, they also need to have this criteria. They need to have people that are going to believe them, be available, trust them. And so the list's all here. So listen to them, believe them, be available and trust them. So help your children really find these people. Now, we can't tell children who to have on their safety team. We have to rely on children to, find these people, but you're their parent, so you can guide them and lead them, but you can't say you have to have your teacher if the teacher's been growling at them, for instance. So really take the time with your children to really break down who could be on their safety team. So how I encourage children to do it is on the thumb would be anybody from their home. So if they want mum and dad and grandma if she lives in their home, or their 23-year-old sister if they live in their home, anybody from their home would take up the thumb. On the next 2 fingers would be 2 people from school. And the reason for 2 people from school is if some children only had the teacher and she was or he was away that day, some kids don't have the cognitive skills to go, well, I could talk to the assistant or the principal or somebody else. They just go, oh gosh, I don't have a safety team today. So that's why I encourage 2 people from school. And then the last 2 people are 2 people from the community. So aunts and uncles, grandparents, next door neighbours, people doing respite, people from church, just any other adults that they have access to. It might be a friend of yours or their best friend's parents. So really, again, tease out with children who that might be. Now, if they want to have Nan and Pop, and Nan and Pop live in the same house, I encourage kids to have Nan and Pop on one finger, because if you have Nan on one finger and Pop on another finger and they go on holiday, it's cut right down. At least if they're both on one finger, then there's still an extra person should they need to talk to them. The reason we have 5 people on our safety team is they did a study of children who had disclosed that they were being sexually abused, and evidence shows children need to tell at least 3 people before they're listened to. So this is why we encourage them to have 5 people. But then at the end of it, once we've helped them make the safety team, we need to talk to them about persistence. Now, for me, persistence is a very, very big part of it, because children, if they tell the first person and they don't listen to them, then we need to encourage them to keep on telling until whatever they need to be known, they're listened to. And so there's quite a bit on persistence. We use the hand, so there's a worksheet there that you can do with all your children. The next thing I would talk to children about is it's really important that children use the correct anatomical names for their private parts. But rather than just focusing on private body parts, I've broken it right down into different sections. So we talk about public and private rooms and places, body functions, behaviour, language, pictures and dancing, then clothing, and then body parts. So we go through and we brainstorm, the private rooms in your home, so bedrooms, bathrooms and toilets are private rooms, and what you might do in them that is private, changing and pooing and things like that. One of the big things that I'm coming across, and I talk about it a great deal, and so I've actually dedicated 2 pages, and that is pornography. When we're doing public and private, I call them private pictures or private movies. I don't call it pornography when I'm working with children. Now, I believe that we need to start talking to children about private pictures and private movies by the age of 6 at the latest, because in my experience, children are coming across pornography on YouTube. Other children are showing them, or they may even go and seek it out. The average age of children knowingly going to look for pornography is about 10. I believe it's a bit younger, but the evidence in research is saying 10, 11. It's a bit out of date in my experience. But anyway, children are seeing pornography. So I've given you the language of how to talk to children about private pictures and private movies. I've also written 2 books, children's books, to help parents talk to children about that sort of thing. So we need to talk about it so that if you find out that your child's come across this, you have to stay calm. And I've really broken it down and given you the language that I use with children, and told you how to handle it. I had some feedback from a parent just recently. She's happy for me to tell her story. She bought one of my children's books after attending a face-to-face parent workshop, and she said, "Holly, I thought I still had 2 more years before I had to use your book with my children, but unfortunately her child's best friend came over for a sleepover, showed them porn on the iPad, and she said, because I'd done your workshop and I had the language, I spent practically the whole day just debriefing about what he'd seen and things like that. It's changed our relationship because I didn't overreact. Normally I would have overreacted, but I didn't overreact because I had been pre-warned, basically." So please read that section and have those conversations with children, because it's not a case of if children see porn, it is when children see pornography, unfortunately. It's really important that children have the correct anatomical names. So that's one of the last things that we would talk about. We go through, when I'm working with children, we go through and we brainstorm all of the names for their private parts. I also use sign language. So public means people around, and the sign for private is your hand in front of your mouth, because your mouth is a private part, and sometimes what you say can be private. So it's a flat hand, turn the key. And kids really understand it when we talk about private means just for you. Another tip that you might find useful, I said earlier that everything to do with safe will always be green, and everything to do with unsafe will always be red. Everything to do with public will always be yellow, and everything to do with private will always be purple. And I do a lot of work in special schools and in support centres, and I was in one ed support centre, and the staff were saying that they've got a child who keeps going and peeing out in the playground, and they don't know what to do about it. Now, this is a really amazing school, and for instance, all of the staff use purple gloves, they have a purple shower screen, they have purple doors on the toilet. And I said, it's simple. You put a yellow card by the door, and as he's going out of the door to play, that's a yellow zone. Remember, that's a yellow zone, so that it would give that cue. I had some feedback from a teacher who worked in a special school, and she has a daughter with autism. And she said, Holly, she's now 21 and goes on respite, and she says, Holly, for the last 10 years when she goes to respite, my greatest fear is another person with special needs or a staff member will sexually abuse my child. And I said to her, it's simple. Why don't you buy her purple underwear, a purple towel and a purple nightie, and nobody touches you under your purple stuff. She's gone, oh my gosh, that's gold. I work in this field, and I hadn't even clicked to that. And that was a really useful tool that she found. So you might find that useful with your children as well. The next thing we talk to children about is strangers. Now, I'm not advocating stranger danger, because only about 4% of sexual abuse is by a stranger. 96% is by somebody that is known and possibly loved by the child. But we need to talk to them about strangers, and especially strangers online. Many of the kids that I'm working with in ed support centres and special schools are going online, and I was in one school and a young boy in year 8 was explaining to me how he literally gets home from school after school, goes into his room, his parents bring his dinner into his room, and he spends all of his time in these virtual worlds. And when I said, but mate, you know, what about going out and playing with your friends? He said, no, Holly, I like being in there because I get to be normal, which, to be honest, nearly made me cry. But he didn't realise just how easy it was to, you know, he thinks these people are his friends and things like that. So it's really important that we explain about strangers, both in the real world but also in cyberspace. There's a section on teaching about personal space and social distance, and then something called the 3 safety questions. Now, I designed this because I want children to always let somebody know where they're going. So before kids go off and do anything, they have to ask these 3 questions. Do I get a yes or a no feeling? Does an adult I live with know where I am? And can I get help if I need it? And that's all spread out there. And then there's the next thing is talking about secrets. So we talk about safe secrets and unsafe secrets. And I've broken that right down. A safe secret is kept for a short time, but if somebody wants you to keep an unsafe secret, they want you to keep it for a lifetime. But you must never keep unsafe secrets. Unsafe secrets might give you early warning signs, and I teach kids you never keep any secret about any kind of touching, and that's all explained in the book. There's also something called secret enablers. Now, sometimes what happens to kids isn't just about a secret. It could be people could trick them, lie to them, use blackmail, bribe, threats, guilt, shame, or con them. So I've given you the definitions of each of those, and it's really important that we explain the different aspects around that. I teach kids that they can say no to anyone, but it comes back to those body signals, to those early warning signs. If mum says eat your vegetables, then do as you're told. Or if dad says turn off the TV and go to bed, then do as you're told, because they don't make you feel unsafe. But you're allowed to say no to anybody if you get those body signals, if you feel unsafe. And that's explained in that section. I've given you some more information about cyber safety. I'm not a cyber expert by any means, but and what I know about cyber, I'm learning from the experts because I'm learning it from children. So there are just some tips and hints about some cyber safety stuff. And I've also written a cyber agreement. And you would go through, I will never give out any of my personal information, tick, and then the child, and you sign it. There's some other things to consider. And then at the back of the book, every parent's greatest fear must be, what if my child told me something had happened to them? Now, realistically, children don't often disclose to parents. It's more likely to be their teacher or somebody like that, because children love their parents and they want to protect them. But I'm going to explain to you what to do if a child does disclose to you, because it may be a family member. You will be on other people's safety teams, even if they don't know protective education. It may be your child's best friend because you're on their safety team. So if a child should come to you and tell you what's happened, you have to stay calm. Inside, you are going to be freaking out. You're going to have your early warning signs, but you have to stay calm. So to help you stay calm, I want you to remember these 3 things. 4 sentences actually. I'm glad you told me. I believe you. It's not your fault, and we're going to do something about it. And I've listed them there in the book. We have to believe children. Even if this child tells lies all the time, it's not our job. We must believe all children. It's given you you need to contact the police or the child protection unit. And I've also given you information for other agencies, Kids Helpline. I'm really passionate about the Kids Helpline, and on my YouTube channel, if you're interested, I've actually given up, there's a whole, if you just go to the Safe for Kids YouTube channel, there's a whole video there about contacting the Kids Helpline. I do that with every class that I work with. We actually physically ring the Kids Helpline. As the E-Safety Commissioner, and you think you know, if you want more information about more cyber stuff, you think you know, and the E-Safety Commission is where I would send you. So that's the book. I hope you find it useful. Yeah, stay safe. Enjoy teaching protective education to your children. And if they're not learning at school, please go and say, why not? Because in Western Australia, it is expected that it will be taught in every school in our state. Thanks for watching.